Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in tonight. 24 of Diddy or Didn't He? That's right, day 24 of the Sean Diddy Combs trial from the federal courthouse there in Manhattan. 24 of these days. I don't even know how many weeks we are. What are we, 4 weeks in, 5 weeks in? My name is Pugs Moran, and this is RadioMisfits.com. And every day we're going to break down everything that happens there in the courtroom. We'll also tell you about the stuff that's happening in front of the courtroom and anything that happens, that doesn't have to do with testimony. We are covering this from beginning to end. Now, you might be used to the shows the last couple of weeks. It's just been me alone going with a fine-tooth comb over every bit of testimony from that day. Well, I can't do that today. Today is a perfect day. I listened to the entire trial. I went through all of it, and I said, you know what today is? Today is a panel day. Today is the kind of day, and I'll tell you why it's a panel day. But first, let's say hello to our panelists. That's right. They're the same guys we got before. They're my co-hosts here on Diddy or Didn't He from WBAP Radio afternoons here in Dallas, Fort Worth. James Parker. Hi, James.
Hello. Fantastic to be back with you.
How have you been since the last time we spoke? Now, I've been trying to do panel shows on Mondays, but we had a holiday 2 weeks ago, and then last Monday, I think we were off or something. There was something. Anyway, have you been keeping up with the Diddy trial since the last time we spoke?
Very little. You know, I see the headlines and news stories that pop up, so I know sort of the skeleton of the conversation, but I'm not going to match your depth.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I can't believe. I mean, it's a good thing that I'm interested in it because there is so much detail. This entire trial has just been an avalanche of details, and I don't know what any of these details have to do with the actual crimes he's charged with, but we're going over them, and today is no different. Now, James Parker, of course, I told you can listen to him, WBAP Radio here in Dallas, Fort Worth afternoons. How about our friend Crack is here. Look at this. We got Head Crack.
Hey, what's going on, y'all?
Of course, Crack we know from, he's an urban radio legend. He's a hip-hop performer in his own right, and you can see him every night on Dish Nation. Dish Nation for I don't know, what are you entering, your second decade of Dish?
Yo, man, 14 years in, and then also the spinoff show Side Dish as well. So, yeah, man, just trying to stay busy out here. Cost of almond milk keeps going up, so you got to keep working.
What's Side Dish? I don't know this one.
So Side Dish is a live show that me and Tanner Thomason do from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Fox Soul, YouTube, and Tubi. And it's cool because it's interactive. There's a chat component as well. It's kind of like the Magic Mirror from Romper Room, except we will say your name.
Did you say Fox Soul?
Yeah.
There's a Fox Soul?
Yeah, you gotta play like a black tax.
Not our demo, James. Not our demo.
Is that filtered out on my Roku? I just think I don't put that on my TV. Is that what happened?
No, anyone can download it. And actually, the co-host is a white guy, Tanner, and he's accepted. He has an automatic plate at the barbecue. It's all encompassing. Anybody can get down with Fox Soul. We invite you all, man. We invite you all.
Hey, wait a second. Speaking of automatic plate at the barbecue, let me tell you something that I accomplished as a father this weekend. It was Father's Day weekend.
Okay.
So proud of this. So Crack and James, I've told you about this too. One of the jobs that I consider to be very important to me and raising my 16-year-old son is his cultural education, right? So I try to expose him to things culturally that he wouldn't naturally come across. Oftentimes that manifests itself in classic old movies that I make him watch or music, and more specifically musical genres. So I was looking around on our shared Spotify list this weekend, and my son made a Spotify playlist. Tell me if I earned my barbecue plate there, Crack. My 16-year-old white kid from Plano has a Curtis Mayfield playlist on his Spotify.
That's impressive.
It's he knows every word to Pusher Man and jokes that he wants to do it at the school talent contest. No, probably not. I was so proud of him. I'm like, man, that's a cool kid. How did this kid just stumble across Curtis Mayfield? Anyway,
I'm blown away by what the kids are into these days. I remember like I was DJing a party for a chiropractor friend of mine, and the kids were coming up making requests, and it was like, how do you know these songs? You know,
video games. He was Curtis Mayfield. His music is played in a lot of video games, he said, and that's how he discovered it and got into it. I'm like, man, that's very cool.
My kids know a lot of music from like when you're listening to the radio while you're driving a car in Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, that's what these
like the scenario comes on. And then there's dad over the shoulder, like, kids, that's a Tribe Called Quest. And like, shut up.
All right, they don't care.
That's where Q-Tip came from. You kiddos know Q-Tip.
All right, folks, look, let's dial it back. It was a great Father's Day weekend. I know we're all fathers. I hope you guys had a great time. I certainly did. Let's get into Diddy or Didn't He for tonight.
Speaking of music, I learned that he must be a big fan of the Pixies.
Diddy, why is that?
Because when he signs in, his fake name is Frank Black.
Okay.
Lead singer of the Pixies.
That is one of his fake names. Guys, let me get started here. Look, just for our listeners who listen every night, let me do a quick little rundown of what happened today in the courtroom, and then we'll get into some conversations about it. So as I said, today is the 24th day of the trial. Boys, geez, hold on, guys. I just had me a problem. Oh, man.
Boys.
Yeah. Fellas, let me do this first. Let's remind ourselves. I like to do this at the start of each show now. Let's remind ourselves what he is being charged with. Okay, so that once we go into all the things that they're throwing out there in court today, we can say, does that have anything to do with what he's being charged with? So once again, just a reminder, Sean Diddy Combs is on trial in New York City, a federal trial for racketeering conspiracy, which is a little bit bigger than just straight up conspiracy. Racketeering conspiracy means that you have engaged with a group of people to conspire as a form of business. Your business model is to do illegal things. That's essentially racketeering conspiracy. He's also facing 2 charges of sex trafficking and 2 charges of transportation to engage in prostitution. I don't know what the difference is. James, Crack, either of you have any idea what the difference between sex trafficking and charges of transportation of prostitution? Seems like very similar charges.
Yeah, it seems like us commoners can probably go to jail for sex trafficking if we've ever flown out or been flued out to engage in sexual intercourse with someone we met over the internet. The prostitution component, that leans a little bit more into what Diddy was actually doing. He was actually paying prostitutes to come and do lewd and lascivious things with the ladies in his life.
James, he makes a good point about the sex trafficking. That does fall under the definition of sex trafficking. If you pay for a girl that you meet online to fly to you in another state and you bought her plane ticket, that can be construed as sex trafficking. That's the world we're living in.
Well, every time I go to court for this, the big tip is when you cross a straight line, you trigger all kinds of other charges. And it's real expensive. It's a pain. It really is. It's
all right, so those are the charges. Let me tell you who we heard from today. Today, like I said, today was a good day for us to do a panel because it wasn't, well, I got to tell you, we all need a cool down from the last 5 days of Jane. Jane was on the stand for the past 5 days. Jane is, of course, also suing Diddy in a separate civil case for $10 million. Jane was Diddy's freak-off girl, the star of his freak-offs, after Cassie. Remember now, Cassie's been gone a long time. You know, we like to think that maybe Cassie was just, but no, Cassie hasn't been with Diddy. I mean, Cassie's got like an 8-year-old kid with somebody else, right? So that'll tell you how long she's been gone. Today on the stand, we didn't get anything like Jane or Mia or any of those people. No, today we heard from Anna Sankar. She's a paralegal specialist for the U.S. Attorney's Office there in the Southern District of New York. She came up and she basically created a narrative. Her job in the U.S. Attorney's Office is to take all of the text messages and the phone recordings and all of the things that we have heard over the course of the first 5 weeks of this case. And her job is to turn it into a story. So she took the stand today. That's Anna Sankar. She tried to explain the timeline and all of the meaning to the different texts that we've heard people give testimony to over 5 weeks. Then after Anna Sankar, we heard Delisa Delisa Pendland. Delisa Pendland is another special agent with the U.S. Attorney's Office. These are all, by the way, summary witnesses. These are not witnesses who had actual hands-on experience to testify to, but they are professionals whose job it is to take all of the evidence and all that and a summarize it all for you for the jury. So that's what we had today. But like I said, kind of dry. It's, it's not exactly like sex partners or paid escorts or anything. It's a very dry, very sort of forensic day there on the witness stand. However, before we got started, guys, we did have a big piece of news, and that was juror number 6 has been excused. Crack, are you following the saga of juror number 6?
Absolutely. The person who, they can't really quite get a wrangle on where this person really lives and all that other good things. A little sketchy to say the least.
So he's a 41-year-old black gentleman who works for the city prison system. He says that he's a big fan of 90s hip hop, but isn't all of that up on what these charges are with Diddy. He is, you would think, a very good witness for the defense. Somebody who says he likes 90s hip hop. He's a guy, same kind of city of New York. He's a local. He's been replaced now by a 57-year-old white guy. The jury, by the way, I do not know, and I've been following this. I've heard no descriptions of the jury short of when individual jurors get called out for something. I don't know what the makeup of the jury is. I have heard that it's quite heavy black female. I don't know if that's good or bad for Diddy, but having a black man about the same age as Diddy, although that's not true. If this guy's 41, Diddy's like 50 something, right? Diddy's like,
he's definitely in his 50s. I would go as high as 56 without Googling, but I will
something
Google.
Like that. Okay, yeah. So I think he's probably my age. That's somewhere maybe a year 55. Older than me or something. He's 55. Okay, 55. So yeah, there you go. All right. So where were we?
Talk about the juror.
Yeah, juror 6 has been released. So some people are already saying that this was a victory for the prosecution, that they got the 41-year-old black gentleman who loves 90s hip hop and replaced him with a 57-year-old man who doesn't know who Diddy is, which I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing.
But does he know who Sean John is or Puff Daddy?
I'm guessing no. I'm guessing he's just very lost on all of this.
Out of all these names that he has to know one of them.
So the judge, you brought up why. James, do you know why this guy was released? Do you need me to go into that for you?
They couldn't figure out where he lived.
Yeah, well, he gave 2.
How would that come up?
Here's how it came up. So when he first started a month and a week ago, 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, something like that, it started. When he first started, he said he was living in Brooklyn with his baby mama and his kid, right? And then over the course of 2 weeks, he apparently moved to New Jersey. And so then he had a different address. And the judge, that's what it was. He moved from one place in Brooklyn to another place in New Jersey. And the judge has a question as to whether or not he ever actually lived in Brooklyn. Judge Subramaniam doesn't think that he actually lives in Brooklyn. His mother does. He thinks he's using his mother's address to receive mail. And, He works for the city of New York, so he has to live in New York. If you work for the city, you must live in the city. He actually resides in New Jersey with how did they find this out? Well, because Diddy, they got a lot of money to hire investigators, and they're following around all of these jurors trying to figure out what's what. Now, this particular juror wasn't challenged by the defense, so that situation wouldn't apply. This juror was challenged by the prosecution. I don't know what the jury makeup looks like. I would love to get a look at them just for a second to see. We got a bunch of grandmas. What do we got on this jury? I need to know. We got young people.
Yeah, I think to go to your point that you was making before, like whether or not like women primarily being on the panel would hurt or help Diddy, I think, especially on the earlier part of the testimonies, I think that hurts Diddy because, like when you show the level of trauma and abuse that some of these women got put through, it's triggering to, men as well as women, but women, I think more so than men. And I definitely don't think that helped. But as the defense continued on trying to paint pictures of like, all right, this person was an opportunist and was with the shenanigans up until the fact that they weren't, that may have skewed some opinions. But I think, depending on how many times they had to watch that videotape over and over again of Sean P. Diddy Combs beating Cassie in that hallway, and then hearing the testimony of Jane Doe, who I don't know if you know who Jane Doe really is, do you?
I don't, and I'm dying to know. I need to know.
It's 50 Cent's baby mama.
Who?
It's 50 Cent's baby mama.
Is that why 50's so involved? Is that why 50's chirping from the sidelines? All the whole time Jane was on
But the level of the petty steps that this goes through, right? Like
right.
50 and Diddy have had weird issues for years prior to this. And I think Diddy only pursued this woman because it was 50 Cent's baby mama, and she's very attractive. And so once that became a thing, 50 started turning the heat up even more on Diddy, and no one really understood why until you start putting all the pieces together, because there was videos and pictures of Diddy and Daphne together before all this stuff. Yeah, Daphne Joy.
So you just dropped her name. So Jane is actually Daphne Joy.
Yes.
Breaking freaking news, man. That is, I have not really looked into that because I figured, she's probably not a vet. You just blew my mind. So
it makes a lot of things make sense.
So you're telling me when Jane is on the stand for 5 days, the last 5 days, and she's just telling the most grotesque stuff, and she talks about her son, her child, and all of that, who lives at this house that Diddy is paying for, and then when it's revealed that she has a child with another man who is very wealthy, you're telling me that's 50 Cent?
Yeah, so if you look at the post that 50 has been making since like last week, he's been killing this woman on Instagram and Twitter and all that good stuff.
I assumed she got knocked up by some Wall Street guy or something, just some rich guy met her in a club, knocked her up. She's getting so she's making 10 grand a month from Diddy, plus another 5 grand a month from something else. Plus, she said she makes about up to 50 grand a month on her OnlyFans. Plus, she's making another 15 grand a month in child support from 50 Cent.
Yeah. God. She's doing well.
She's doing really well, man. James, are you aware that Jane, this woman we're talking about, is still getting $10,000 a month from the man that she's testifying against?
Okay. But she's making all this money, but what is her skill? Is she an accountant?
Sex.
Is she a lawyer?
Sex.
Is she a coder? Because I can do a lot of things, and I drive a 10-year-old Toyota with body damage. No, apparently not.
It's insane, isn't it?
This sucks, man. This sucks. This is like watching an episode of Cribs. You're like, I get it. I suck. Okay, God.
She's a real piece of work, man. I'm glad that I now have a name that I can go and I can look in and do a little background, because I have to tell you, I have been really hard on Jane the last 5 days. She came across like a real piece of shit. She got into a fight with Tenny Garagos, who was the defense during cross-examination. Tenny Garagos asked her about a bag that Diddy had purchased for her, like a $10,000 bag. And in Jane's response to Tenny Garagos, the attorney was, "Oh, don't act like you don't know how much it is." Like in front of a working class jury, you're copping this attitude. And then the other thing she said was, Tenny Garagos later during cross started to ask Jane to justify what James just did. She asked Jane to justify what all this money is for. And she basically said, "Because I'm worth it." Jane said in front of a working class jury, "Because I'm worth it." Like if you're a 45-year-old single mom on that jury who's got 2 jobs, and you're looking at this girl who just, "I'm worth it," it doesn't play well. I think Jane, Crack, let me ask you this, since you seem to know more about Jane. I had been suspecting from about day 3 of Jane on the stand that Jane was in fact a double agent. She was presented as a witness for the prosecution. She was presented as somebody who was going to drop bombs for the prosecution, but all Jane did was win days for the defense. I think she's still being paid by Diddy. She said, they asked her flat out, they said, what do you think of Diddy? She's on the stand. She said, I love him and I respect him and I will always love him. This is supposed to be a weapon for the prosecution. She says that during cross.
No, it definitely backfired. And if you read between the fine lines and some of the testimonies, like one thing about Cassie is she kind of fought back. Jane too fought back. Like there's like yo, like I punched Diddy in the face and then he hit me back. Like she was not afraid of Diddy. And I think that's why the toxicness of their relationship still works. Because even leading up to, I think even after the Cassie payout, Jane Doe was still around. And because I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of these people will suffer some insurmountable things just to maintain the lifestyle that they are used to.
They only broke up because he got arrested. That's why Jane was with him doing freak offs after the house raids. Remember the house raids where we found all the baby oil? That was in March. And then he was arrested in September. Between March and September, Jane participated in half a dozen freak offs with him.
Yo, and I forgot what like really absurd gross detail came out last week about the freak offs, but any woman who would be with a dude who would play with the after effects of sex from another man.
Yeah.
Like at this point, you're just a worker.
Yeah, we learned that in week 1. That was something that Cassie testified to that Diddy would do after the man finished on Cassie. Diddy would call Cassie into the bathroom where he would ask her to smear it all over him, which is gross.
No, I forgot what Jane Doe said, number 2, but what she said was it was higher up than that. I forgot the verbiage, but it was just like, ew, brother, ew.
Yeah, there's been a cavalcade of grossness. James, where do you think this trial is at from what you've been paying attention to? Is there who's winning? That's a good question, James. Who do you think is winning, the prosecution or the defense?
Well, the defense playbook, and it just might work even at this late stage, is that he's nasty and he's a freak and he's totally wrong and gross, but that's not illegal. So what has he done that's illegal? If you give a girl a ride across the state line, so she's going to do it for free, that can't be illegal. If it's a prostitute, I think they may have something there. But did any of these prostitutes cross state lines? And
yes, multiple times, all the time. They were getting in private jets and flying from Florida to LA. But it's all dudes. It's all dude prostitutes. You know, it's when you.
No one cares about dudes.
No one cares.
Yeah, nobody cares about dudes. Women, we worry about, but dudes, no. A dude who's a male escort is like a 6'5" super jack dude. Okay, I'm not worried about him.
Yeah, you've already won at life. Shut up.
Right. Can you imagine being a man who could make his money just having sex? Oh,
with Cassie. With Cassie.
I know.
What a tough day at work.
All right, let's get into some of the things.
You're not getting the old Widow Jones down the street. Looks like an ad for Gravity.
Yeah, can you imagine being the escort that picks up the phone? Like she was just Jane and even Cassie. They were booking their own escorts. They were just going online, a website called Cowboys and Angels, and she would just pick guys randomly off the page. And Crack, you had a good point that I want to make sure we're in agreement on, and that is the prosecution is getting their ass handed to them because everything that they've overcharged. I've been saying this since the beginning. They're not going to get convictions on any of these charges. That's why I like to read them at the start of the show, so we all remember exactly what we're talking about: sex trafficking and prostitution across state lines and all that. All of the things that they are copying to, the abuse, the drugs, buying drugs, all of that kind of stuff, not being charged with. So it's not a problem for them to admit all of this stuff. I stopped counting the days. It was on day 15 where I was like, all right, it's 14 days for the defense, 1 day for the prosecution. I'm going to stop counting. I have not seen the defense win a day in 3 weeks. And here's the worst part of that. This is the prosecution portion of the trial. The prosecution is going to wrap their case this week. We expect them to wrap on Friday. Then the defense is going to get the stage. And if the defense has won every day so far, I mean, imagine when they're actually driving the boat, what they're going to be able to do.
Well, quick question that I have, like, to prove a RICO case, you just have to get 3 random charges to stick, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Why? I don't know.
Because
I know you have to prove conspiracy between more than 2 people. So is that what you're talking about?
Okay. So breaking certain things down, right? So you think about what OJ eventually went down for. He literally walked into a room and said, "Nobody could leave. I'm coming to take my stuff." Mysteriously, that is now kidnapping. Even though he didn't like get in his van, pull a bag over your head, throw you in, he walked into a room. So as Cassie's trying to leave, he's roughing her up in the hallway, dragging her back to the room, a person who wants to go against their will. They could try to paint a picture and say that was kidnapping. So that's one of the 3.
Okay.
Can
can I just answer that real quick? Okay,
Uh-huh.
so here's what they're going to say about that. She didn't leave him after that. They presented text messages and conversations between the 2. That wasn't, she willingly stayed in his. I mean, weeks later, she was planning freak offs with him. So, I mean, if she had left at that point and said, "Oh, you all saw the video and that was enough for me." But the defense is going to say that these women were all active and willing participants in this whole thing simply because they thought there'd be a payoff for them. It was transactional. And you said another thing about Jane and Cassie being able to tell Diddy no and throwing punches at him. Dude, they had serious agency in these relationships. It wasn't like they were kidnapped or chained to a radiator. They could have left him. Cassie was dating Cuddy on the side. They were not prisoners. Diddy's, and what bothered them, and especially what bothered Jane, is that Diddy made it perfectly clear to all of these women where they stood. He made the ones that were just freak off girls. They knew they were just freak off girls. The ones that were red carpet girls like Cassie. What Jane never liked was that Cassie was a red carpet girl and a freak off girl, but Jane was always just a freak off girl. So
yeah,
these women, as we're hearing their stories, and again, we've heard their stories now through the narrative, through the lens of the prosecutions. These women have been telling their stories, and quite frankly, they could have left any time. They have not proven a case that says that he was a monster who was keeping them against their will, that they were drugged, that they weren't in their right mind. Hell, there were freak-offs where these girls said, "Yeah, we're not doing drugs this time." They told Diddy, "Yeah, we're not doing drugs this time." So they had freak-offs without drugs. What does that tell you? It tells you they had agency and they could say no, and they could have left at any time, but they didn't. James, you look like you're chomping at the bit there.
Eloquently broke it down.
Yeah, man, I can barely get my wife to put out on Father's Day.
Yeah.
I was like leaning into it yesterday. I was like, you know what day it is, and the kids are asleep. She's like, "Oh, right."
Can you make her a star? That's the difference.
No, I can't. Man, my game is just not at that level.
There's still time. What about the whole money laundering and bribery situation? He did pay that person at the hotel $100,000 to hold that hotel video footage for him. A crafty prosecutor can maybe spin that into some sort of money laundering conversation. I mean, that's another check on the box.
He's not charged with that. He's not charged. What you can do is you can tie that into another group of acts and you can claim it's a criminal conspiracy, that it's a business. His everyday actions, tie them all together, create the business of his world. And his business is a criminal enterprise. That's what they could try and prove. But what you just described specifically, he is not charged with. So,
Well, I mean, not being charged with it, but like when people try to prove that there's a crime that has taken place, even though that's not what we brought you to the table for. I mean, because
It could get rolled.
Yeah,
into the
that's what I'm
RICO
saying. Because
stuff.
the RICO thing is such a complicated thing because it's an umbrella. It's like a bunch of
Mhm.
prosecutors throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping some things or another stick. So it's like, all right, pick your poison. Let's see what we can make stick. Can we make this whole thing with the hotel thing be a thing? We did fly this prostitute in, and he got paid. These people were responsible for bringing drugs for Diddy. Like an assistant even testified against, for that. So it just depends on how high they want to trump those charges up, because like people like me and you can do the same crimes individually, a la carte, if you will, and it won't be wrapped up in a RICO case. But when people are trying to make something stick, if
Yeah.
you just seen people go down for crazy things that you didn't think would have been their downfall, but it is. I don't think the man should get life.
Well, again, that's the problem. He's been in prison now for about a year, almost a year. I think when this is all over, it'll be a year since he was arrested and held without bond. They have done nothing to show me, and like I said, I've been following this crazy close. They've done nothing to show me that this man deserves life in prison. They overcharged him because a bunch of these prosecutors are trying to make a career for themselves. They want to be the people that put Diddy in prison for life. They want to use that to run for governor. They want to use that for whatever it is that they've got planned. They overcharged them. They blew their wad horribly, and they're being, in my opinion, they're being embarrassed day in and day out by an incredibly competent defense team that is just destroying everything that they're putting out there as being a gotcha. Defense comes up and cross and makes me go, oh, well, they just totally just explained it. I guess it wasn't a gotcha. I guess. So I'm just saying there's trouble here. And Diddy, I got to ask, Diddy, Crack, I got to ask you, because you're in the urban world. You perform with the boat. By the way, we've never talked about your hip hop act. I don't know where people can hear that if they want to find that.
Oh, word. Well, whether you're talking about Denga Brothers or Head Crack as a solo artist, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. New project, Microdose, out right now. New single called Breathwork is dropping on Friday on all streaming platforms, wherever you steal your music from. So tap into the energy. Yeah, this coming Friday.
All right, good. So knowing that about you, what is his career? If he walks from this, and I believe he's going to walk from this, is his career bigger than ever and now he's untouchable? Or is he kind of a pariah? Is he kind of out there on Kanye Island? What is Diddy?
I definitely feel like he's on Kanye Island at this point, but probably not to as severe a degree, because the difference between Diddy and Kanye is Kanye will talk, Diddy will shut up and just kind of just fold into himself and figure it out.
Well, I don't think Diddy's crazy. I think Kanye is mentally unbalanced and bipolar, whereas I think Diddy might just be a bad dude, but he can control himself.
Yeah, a bad dude who I think probably spiraled out a little bit, on drugs, alcohol, and just the unlimited power that the money and the influence that he had afforded him. I think the industry no one's going to want to stand next to him for a minute. And I just think it'll take the right situation to get everybody back on people's side. Because the one thing about hip hop, I think people within the culture, they have low key a short memory. For the people that they want to have a short memory for. Like there are some people who, like Gunna, for instance. Gunna was a rapper who allegedly snitched on some of the YSL people just so he can get out of prison early. And for a minute, no one wanted to record a song with Gunna. Gunna kept recording songs, stayed hot, semi-relevant. And now Gunna is back to collaborating with whoever the Gunna want to collaborate with. So same thing in the Diddy space. He hasn't been like a star maker in quite some time, but his money and influence created some things, and some of that has eroded. So it's going to be interesting to see how he rises from the ashes out of this. Because the locks have been changed.
It is interesting when you think of what kind of star Diddy was. Diddy was the mainstream of the mainstream, the elite of the biggest stars of the moment. Now, hip hop, not considered mainstream, but he was mainstream of your grandma could probably name 3 people in hip hop. And I bet you P. Diddy's one of them, or you know what I mean? That he was he crossed over. He's doing movies. He's showing up on talk shows. He's not like, trying to think of some other examples. And my point is this. success to him has always been acceptance in the mainstream and being able to cross over. I don't think he's ever going to have that again. But I do think that he is going to find this space where he's going to be able to thrive, whether it's independently online, creating things with, I mean, I don't know that he'll ever have the power of like a Warner Discovery behind him again. I don't know, but who knows? We're in the do-it-yourself era. I mean, I don't think he's done. I think he's going to walk. I think there's going to be some change to the aura of who we think he is, but I don't think he's done. James, how about you?
Well, I think he was about done anyway, because hip hop's such a young genre that they don't really have a blueprint for like the legend who has a career after age 50. You know, this is not something that happened with the first generation, and he's kind of in that second wave. And so, you know, he was pretty much done anyway. I mean, who over 55 is tearing it up in hip hop? I mean, Eminem kind of, but he's not even, is he even 50 yet?
No, M's definitely 50. I mean, there's a weird circuit that, you know, LL Cool J has helped spearhead and kind of fortify with his whole Rock the Bells platform, to where like these legacy acts, these OGs, they go on these Rock the Bells cruises and perform for people like on the cruises and these stopping places. He puts together this Rock the Bells fest. Slick Rick dropped an album Friday. Slick Rick is 60 years old. Now, granted, it won't be the #1 album in the country.
My kids don't know who Slick Rick is.
That's so sad. You should get him a children's story book.
My kid loves 90s hip hop.
Word. So, like, like Diddy, I think his best play is to embrace the villainy. And when I say embrace the villainy, maybe lean into that sexual world. Have a OnlyFans channel.
Be a freak guy. Yeah, maybe lean into the whole freak thing. I mean, I'm not saying no porn, but be sexy, dirty guy. He's always been sort of corporate guy. That's been his with the tie, the suits and the glasses and the limousines and the popping bottles. He's always been sort of, his brand has always been the apex of success. That's what it is. When you look at Diddy, he's the apex of success, you know, whether it's, you know, in the corporate boardrooms or, you know, on the jets. So maybe now he becomes skeevy, skanky, sexy guy. I don't know.
He gets a velvet jacket and starts smoking tobacco.
Craig, James brought up a good point, though, that is interesting of the first generation, because hip hop is truly unique in that we can pinpoint exactly the first wave of hip hop superstars. You know, whether you're talking about what you mentioned, Slick Rick, but even going back to like, you know, I mean, I'll start it with the 80s guys, the LL Cool J's and stuff like that. Those fellas, they're iconic, but they are irrelevant. Like as far as hip hop and in the culture and all of that, they are irrelevant, but they are iconic. Like, is Snoop Dogg still relevant? He's iconic. I mean, he is on the Mount
Rushmore. Snoop Dogg is having his issues. I mean, all the OGs have their issues. Like, right. I wouldn't go as far as saying LL is irrelevant, because there are people who know him for NCIS Los Angeles, right? Which is a departure from music.
I mean, but you know, hip hop culture, like Kendrick's not irrelevant. LL Cool J is in hip hop.
But L got his audience when he did his Force tour last year. Every show was packed. Every single show was packed. And you may not hear them on the radio. You may not hear their newest music, but that audience has a disposable income because they're people who are like 50 plus, 40 plus. So they're operating in a different space. So same thing with Snoop Dogg. There's a lot of people, like Snoop Dogg has been making some of the best music of his career in the last year or two, but he kind of bumped his head with the Trump thing. When he performed at the crypto ball, there's a lot of people that was like, yo, Snoop, what the hell are we doing? Because Snoop is the same person who was on like, you know, social media talking about like, yo, man, if you show up at any of these Trump events and perform for Trump, you a coon, and you know, and all this other stuff. And next thing you know, you blink twice and he's performing at the crypto ball. And then he tried to be like, hey, listen, man, you can't, like, you got to look at it for 30 for 30. Are you going to like sacrifice 30 minutes of like me doing this thing versus 30 years of what I've given to the community? I was trying to do this so I could take the money from that and give it back to the hood. I mean, that's the story he went with. But, you know, like, so he's still being judged by the court of public opinion. So it's an interesting space a lot of these OGs occupy.
All right, let's run through some of the things that we did hear about today on the witness stand. Again, we heard two summary witnesses, two people who work for the Southern District of New York, the state's attorney, the U.S. Attorney's Office there. Again, the first one was Anya Sankar. She went through a whole bunch of. Well, she took all of the texts that we've already heard over 5 weeks, and she sort of created a big, like a PowerPoint presentation. I'll just put it that way. She showed you where all of these texts fit into a story, a narrative. Again, we don't need to go into a whole bunch of it. It was a very boring day today. These were all very sort of forensic kind of testimonies. But there were a couple of interesting things that happened. Let's see, what can we get into here? There were some conversations. I didn't mention this. So after we talked about juror number 6 being replaced, Judge Subramaniam indicated that there was an issue with another juror, although he said it was in no way linked to the issues with juror number 6. Subramaniam said that they would further question this particular juror after the jury is dismissed this afternoon. So we may have another juror being dismissed. We don't know anything about this one. We've been hearing about juror number 6 for about 4 days now. Finally, today they let him go. I don't know who this other one is, but apparently we've got another issue with a jury.
Yeah, like I heard like something to the degree that the judge feels like that juror may have been talking to someone off-site about the trial.
Is that what we're in?
Yeah, but the way I'm interpreting it is it seems like he's been reached out to by Diddy's team, because the message that this person allegedly got was like, hey, are you juror number 6? And that sounds more like somebody wanting to know on the defense side, a little bit of witness tampering, a little nudge, nudge.
I don't put it past Team Diddy. Now, I do not suspect his attorneys of engaging this. But Team Diddy, I'm talking about his people that are not the attorneys that are sitting there. Oh, I imagine they got all kinds of paid private investigators out there and trying to get whatever edge they can. If we've learned nothing about Diddy over the course of 5 weeks, dude is a grinder. The dude works hard. And when there's something that he wants, whether it's a freak off or, some party to go off in Milan, dude's going to get it done. I mean, I have a lot of respect for his work ethic. My God, I mean, anybody who thinks that like Diddy is, well, I guess who thinks it? Does anybody think that Diddy's a lazy guy? No, right? No. Anybody who knows that he's obviously a grinder who's, gotten all this success.
You're starting to get into some issues because if you have a juror dismissed, that opens up the wiggle room for if someone wants to try and make a case for a motion for a mistrial. And then if you have 2, then it sort of doubles the risk that this case could just get blown up. And so if you go into mistrial territory, I mean, that kind of works in Puff Daddy's favor, although he's still in jail. You get another shot at the title.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think a mistrial at this point works in favor of the prosecution, because the prosecution is losing badly. And if this trial just goes to the jury, if they without a mistrial, they're going to lose. And I don't know. I know it was the prosecution who raised the issue with juror number 6 after losing like 10 consecutive days. So maybe that is what the prosecution is angling for. Maybe prosecution wants to get another fresh crack at this because they see this is not going well. They probably like to recharge, I would imagine, because this is
they got to adjust their strategy if they're trying to win this thing, because it's almost like watching a very close basketball game. There have been some weeks where I'm like, get this man some sketchers, he's walking. And then there's some weeks where I'm like, well, damn, this might be the nail in the coffin that, the prosecution was looking for. And I don't know, it just seems like, with this juror thing and we still have like another week in it because we're on week 6 right now. I think they said they expected it to go 8 weeks. So I don't know how much gas in the tank the defense has. But like you said, if the defense gets to run uncontested for the final week and a half, it's going to definitely work out on their side.
Yeah, I honestly think that the defense can do about 2 or 3 days. They introduce a couple of their own witnesses, which they're going to do, and then just say, Your Honor, we rest. we're good, and I think they'll win. I mean, I don't think the defense has to do very much, considering that, in my opinion, they have won the case during the prosecution's turn. they've already won. A couple of things that I did want to talk about, a couple of the texts that were discussed, and this goes to Headcrack's point earlier when we were talking about how these girls could push back. These girls had agencies. These girls were, able to act like girlfriends more so than kidnap victims. One of the here, let me read you this. This came from the Stand today. The defense attorney, Tenny Garagos, pointed to a message exchange between Christina Karam, that's KK. For those of you who don't know, KK is Diddy's chief of staff. She's his right hand for years and years. In one message, Jane, what's Jane's real name, Crack?
Joy.
Joy.
Oh, Daphne. Daphne Joy.
Daphne Joy. She's an Instagram OnlyFans model, huh?
Yeah, I didn't know about the OnlyFans component, but
no, I do. She does. She testified to it. Yeah.
That's what's up.
Yeah. In one of the messages, Jane, who dated Diddy from 2021 to 2024, said in the text message shown to the jury about a freak off she was planning, "I'm excited to surprise him." Jane later sent KK, then chief of staff for Combs, photos of the hotel room that she had decorated with rose petals and heart balloons. Now, this goes back to something that she testified to earlier about setting up the room. But here you have the defense going, again, showing the jury this girl is going to try and or the prosecution is going to try and convince you that these women were kidnapped and that these women were drugged and these women were being held against their will. And yet here we go. Another example. Jane excited, sending texts to Diddy's chief of staff before the freak off, excited about the way she's decorated the room, saying, I'm so excited to surprise him with this one tonight. Tenny Garagos then pointed to a text conversation between KK, again, Diddy's chief of staff, pointed to a conversation between KK and Jane. In the message, KK twice asked Jane to call her and said that Combs was pushing her to figure out plans. This time, and this is the defense showing this to the jury, this time, Jane said, "My answer to him this time is no," and it's still no. So this is important because this is the defense showing two completely different text messages from Jane regarding freak-offs. One where Jane is like, "I'm so excited, this is going to be so great." And then the other one where she's saying, "No, I'm not into it this time." The defense just showed the jury that these girls could come and go as they pleased. If they didn't want to
had
do
options.
Yes.
Yo, and did you hear there was a audio recording they played in court, and it was Diddy calmly pretty much explaining like, "Hey, listen, like, if this is how you gonna be, like, if they were trying to paint a picture of a tyrant." Okay, go ahead.
What you're looking for is, "It's all cool." That's what he said. She said, she texted him. He said, "Baby, are you up for this this weekend?" And she said, "No, I'm on my period. I'm not really feeling good." And Diddy responded, text, "It's cool."
Well, no, but there's that, which also paints a picture of like, okay, cool. He wasn't bullying people into doing it, but there was an audio voice message that he left for her, and it was a very calm mess. It's almost like if you said, "Hey, I'm not bringing you 5 guys tonight," and I really wanted 5 guys, not actual 5 people, but the food, and he was disappointed but not angry, and it was like, okay, well, that is not what I expected based on the picture that was being painted in totality.
Do you know what he got most angry? I mean, obviously we've seen the video from the Intercontinental. We know he gets angry and we know he gets violent. We know that he did that to Cassie. Okay. But in all of these other stories, there are examples of him screaming and yelling and all of that. But what he seems to have really irritated him. Do you know the story? I got to ask you this because you told me about Joy, right? You told me who Jane really was. Okay, so maybe you have some information on this. Last week, Jane testified about when she was on a break from Diddy. She and a friend flew to Las Vegas for the birthday party of another iconic rapper. She got on a plane with this guy, her and her friend. Remember, she's on a break from Diddy. So another iconic rapper is like, "Hey, Jane, how about jumping on my plane? My girlfriend/wife." She testified she didn't know if it was a girlfriend or a wife. "My girlfriend/wife is having a birthday in Vegas. Jump on the plane with us. Let's go." It was on this trip in Vegas that Jane realized this other iconic hip hop guy and his wife/girlfriend were also, quote, in the scene and did their own freak offs with the same escorts that Jane and Diddy used. Why? Because she went to Vegas and she ran into Antoine. Antoine, who was one of her and Diddy's, I call them sex horses, but Antoine was one of her and Diddy's sex horses. She goes to this other rapper's party in Vegas and runs into Antoine, and Antoine says, yeah, I do the same thing with them. I don't know who this other rapper is. I have a very strong thought. Do you know anything about this? Who is this other?
I don't know definitively who it is. It's because some of the clues are so loose, because the only other notable big name, we know who that person's married to. It's not his girlfriend.
He's married to Beyonce. They're married, and Beyonce's birthday is in September. This was in January. So whoever this girlfriend / wife of the iconic rapper is, their birthday is in January. Crack, Bianca Censori's birthday is January 5th.
So that's not it.
And then and then the very next day that this is presented in court, Kanye shows up. The very next day he shows up to give Diddy his support. I'm telling you, I think it's Kanye.
This is good detective work. And you know what? The description of wife / girlfriend, because no one definitively knew what the hell was going on. And Kanye is bizarre enough and a admitted sex addict to the point to where this would, I could definitely see this being a thing.
The January 5th birthday for Beyonce, the thing that really does it for me, James, is that Kanye and Bianca Censori are the only two that fit the description that Jane said on the stand. Jane was on the stand and she testified it was another iconic rapper and his, I don't know, wife or girlfriend. That fits Kanye and Bianca Censori. We don't know what they are. We still don't know what they were, when they're over. So, yeah, I think that's it. And then the next
What year was this? What year was that plane flight?
2022, 2023. I think it was 2020. It was, yes, because they were on a break. So it was the January of 2024. That's what it was. Boom. Boom. January of 2024. Okay.
Man, that's recent. Okay.
Yeah.
That definitely lines up. It definitely lines up. Well, I don't know why I didn't think him, because like my roulette wheel was spinning and it's like Nelly and Ashanti, no. And definitely like, there's just certain people who like stay out of harm's way at a certain level. Where's Ludacris?
Yeah.
Man, like that's even ludicrous to think that Ludacris would do such a thing. Like Ludacris stays out of trouble. Like that dude, like man, like he pays his parking tickets, all his Blockbuster fees are zeroed out. Like Ludacris don't want no smoke.
How many people could count as iconic though? And it's that recent, so you don't have to like time travel.
So here's what I did. So here's what I thought. All right, iconic in this context. I went, okay, Diddy, Jay-Z, Kanye, Dre, Snoop,
Drake, Lil
Wayne, not Drake. Even Drake, I think, is too soon, too recent. I'm talking, iconic. I don't know, who am I missing there, Crack? Of all of those, I looked at
those are the big names. I mean, the sad thing about rap, there's like very few people who ascend to that certain pinnacle to where like your constant jet life. Mogul status. I mean, like there are very few that reach the head of the class like that. And and I was that's Nas, no way. Because like you have to think about the act, the personality, and the people that these people are like associated to and attached to. And yeah, man, I think the roulette wheel does stop on Kanye West because it makes the most sense, because you could just tell when people operate loose.
Wife and girlfriend, that fits Kanye. January 5th, they flew to Vegas, January, to celebrate her birthday. And what was the other one? Kanye shows up in court the next day. After this whole storyline is presented, the very next day, Kanye shows up. I'm telling you.
Okay, that's probably him then.
Kanye's into freak-offs.
It reminds me of the time when the police was doing a mass hunt for this guy named Larry Davis, not to be confused with Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm. And Larry Davis showed up at the press conference and stood behind the police that was talking about looking for him.
No, no.
Like, yeah, like it was like one of the wildest like things in New York crime up to that point. And yeah, man, like so for Kanye to show up because his name was mentioned, even like loosely or like faintly, it all checks because he's that silly.
Silly is the great way to place it. He showed up, caused a huge hubbub. They had to pause the actual courtroom because everybody was murmuring and all that. They placed him in an overflow room where he sat next to Diddy's son for approximately 10 minutes before leaving. He just showed up, caused all kinds of a distraction, and then left 10 minutes later.
He's like, boring.
He's a weird dude.
Right? Like, what is that? All right, guys, that's it. I mean, like I said, it was a very, very low-key forensic kind of day today. A lot of boring sort of things. James, where can people find you if they're looking to hear more of your opinions and hot takes?
The podcast for the James Show is anywhere you're listening to podcasts, probably. And live, I'm on WBAP weekdays 2 to 5.
Right here in Dallas. And how about you, Crack? Where can people enjoy your creations?
Hey, check it out, man. You can hear my voice on Pictionary with Jerry O'Connell. I'm the announcer. You'll hear me, but not see me. Also, Dish Nation, 5 nights a week. Side Dish, 5 nights a week as well. Microdose, my project, is out streaming right now. New single, Breathwork, comes out Friday.
All right. Dude, thank you, Crack.
So he does a show with Verno now.
Who?
From Stand By Me. He was Verno. Verno.
Oh, Jerry O'Connell?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I never had the opportunity to meet him prior to doing that show. Cool dude. Amazing host. Fun guy.
You know what I'm talking about, Pugs? You look a little lost.
Yeah, because how deep did you go on his resume to pull up Verno? The dude's been in a lot bigger things than that.
Then Stand By Me?
Yeah,
well, now that he's doing
Kangaroo Jack.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know. He's Jerry Connell. He's been in a lot of things. He used to be he was on a sitcom on ABC that I thought was really funny.
He's been in Rebecca Romaine's Famous.
Yes, he has. There you go. And you know what?
Great role.
For all of us fat kids, he's a fat kid who got out of the fat kid prison. He turned into a hot dude. He went from a fat kid to a hot dude, and he landed Rebecca Romaine. And you know what? I doff my cap to that. Good for him. That is good for
Uncle
him.
Jesse leftovers.
Guys, thank you so much. We'll do this again. Maybe next Monday we do a little panel.
Okay.
Whenever you want to catch up, there he is. That is James Parker and Head Crack, our panelists when we do the Diddy or Didn't He panel shows. Thank you so much to them for hanging out. Thank you for hanging out with me. Like, follow, subscribe, do all of that stuff. Every single day of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, I will be breaking all of the witness testimony down for you, telling you all the things happening inside and outside the courtroom. On occasion, we're going to do panel shows like today where we have other people, but most days it'll just be me going through the testimony with a fine-tooth comb. As I say, like, follow, subscribe, do all of that good stuff. And we'll see you tomorrow for, is it day 25? Is tomorrow going to be day 25 of Diddy or Didn't He with me, Pugs Moran, here on Radio Misfits, radiomisfits.com.